I still remember Drakengard 3 analysis. That was the highlight to my Clemps experience. So let's see how Clemps' humor has become more sophisticated over the ages. Here's NieR Analysis Part 1 by Clemps. And there's ads, of course. Oh god, I forgot to end the stream on YouTube! I'm such an idiot! It wouldn't be a Ninja Kuma stream if I didn't fuck something up. Carry on.
Oh, feels good to be talking about Yoko Taro games again. Feels like it was so long ago. Now, I promised I'd look at NieR and analyse it to the best of my ability back in the end of my Drakengard 3 analysis, where I stated I'd take a look at it when NieR Automata got a release date. Well, good news, family and friends!
Glory to mankind.
I'm not gonna lie, this entire project was pretty intimidating, so when the news about Automata's release date hit my dainty little ears, I was mixed with two emotions: overwhelming joy and apprehension. For those of you new to my channel, you may not be aware of my previous Drakengard analysis videos. What relevance do they have to NieR, you limey cunt? If you'd let me finish. The Drakengard series plays an important role in the creation of the NieR universe. If you want to see the whole in-depth explanation of this, you can click these links here. Drakengard as a series wasn't overwhelmingly popular due to its average sales, at least in the West, but it developed something of a cult fan following, myself included. People were drawn in by its dark method of storytelling, and a feeling of no matter what you do, there won't be a happy ending. So of course, when NieR was revealed to be a continuation of Drakengard's ending E, which was originally a joke ending, well, it got a few eyebrows raised to say the least. Trust a director like Yoko Taro to continue the Drakengard timeline in a completely different franchise. Oh, and I'm sure you're all deliriously excited to hear how I discovered NieR's link into the Drakengard series. No one fucking cares, faggot? Oh, sorry, I promise there's a point to all this. So way back when NieR first came out, I picked it out due to curiosity. I'd heard the game was bland with its gameplay but phenomenal in its storytelling and music. I'm not one to shun a game for having less than fantastic gameplay, so I decided to give it a whirl. During the prologue, I started to have fond flashbacks to Drakengard due to the obscene amounts of blood that poured out of enemies in a satisfyingly disturbing fashion. Keep in mind, I had no idea these two games were linked by this point. Hell, even when this name flashed onto the screen, I didn't bat an eyelid. Mostly due to being at a time in my life where I just played a game and didn't concentrate on who made it. It was only later when I decided to Google more information about it that everything started to make sense and my head was well and truly blown. So why bring this up in the first place? Well, keeping in mind that I'm such a big fan of the Drakengard series and had no clue this was a continuation, it makes me wonder how many other people have no idea this game is connected to a different game altogether. The hints they drop at us are subtle enough that you'd miss it if you have no memories of Drakengard's final ending fresh in your brain, so hopefully by doing this video, it'll make a few people have that moment of, holy fuck, wait, what? From the get-go, NieR presents us with something strange before we even start playing. This is mostly common knowledge, but NieR was split into two games. In Japan, there's NieR Gestalt on the Xbox 360 and Replicant on the PS3. In Gestalt, you play as an older man looking after his daughter, whereas in Replicant, you're a younger man looking after your sister. The West, not being able to comprehend sexy boys, got Gestalt both on the 360 and PS3, leaving Replicant exclusively to the Japanese. But that didn't stop little old me from getting my slimy degenerate hands on it, and other than the character's age, there's honestly no difference from title to title. If you want to play as a father to a young girl, play Gestalt. If you want to play as a brother, play Replicant. The plot stays exactly the same, so don't worry about missing anything important to the story. On a personal note, I feel like playing as Papa NieR is a more compelling experience than the brother. Whilst I massively prefer the design to Brother NieR compared to Gollum, the struggle of a father trying to keep his daughter alive is a much more compelling narrative than a brother and sister. Okay, so this is how I'm going to break down this video. I'll start by talking about how the Drakengard series ties into the prologue of NieR. And I'm not just talking about Angelus fighting the Queen, I'm talking about the events directly after the Queen crumbled and Angelus was shot down by the Japanese Air Force. These stories are all documented within Grimoire NieR, a book that was published exclusively in Japan, but thankfully some legends decided to translate the whole bloody thing. So let's just take a moment to thank these faceless heroes.
Thank you! Good job!
After this, like my other videos, I'll start talking about gameplay changes and my general thoughts on whether or not I think it's a positive move from the original franchise, so kind of like an analysis/review. Then we'll start cracking on with the general plot after the prologue. So without further ado, let's get started. Hope your bellies are empty, because trust me, this is going to be meaty. The beginning of NieR introduces us to a post-apocalyptic city which appears to be covered in heavy snow. A title card pops up announcing that the year is 2049 and it's summer. We're introduced to a man called NieR hiding out in an abandoned supermarket, a strange book by his side. The book seemingly talks to him, but he's having none of that voodoo shit. Get out of here! Shortly after, he's alerted to danger as we're introduced to the primary antagonists. The creatures, known as Shades, attempt to attack us, but we dispose of them pretty quickly. It's now that we're introduced to Yona, a central driving force in the plot whose importance will be explained as we dive further into the game. After the Shades appear for round 2, NieR tells his daughter not to touch the book under any circumstance. Guess what happens? Guess what fucking happens? NieR fights off the gathering Shades with the assistance of the mysterious book.
I need to protect Yona.
Oh god, Bayonetta, fuck off.
By using this book, he can use powerful magic, and during the whole introductory segment, it's a great way to get the players pumped up for powers they'll eventually receive later on in the game. But it turns out Yona was a cheeky cunt and touched the book regardless of her father's warning. An ominous black text starts to move up her body as her father calls out for assistance. This is the catalyst to the events that occur in NieR.
We need help! Please, anyone! Help! Help us!
Kids and books. Sure, just a century later.
Wait, what the fuck? What the fuck? I don't understand.
Alright, I'm off.
Why? Right, now before we jump into what the HE double hockey sticks is going on here, I said I'd try and explain how Drakengard links into this intro.
God damn it!
On June 13th, 2003, a young prince named Kaine and his dragon Angelus were transported from their world of Midgard to Tokyo, taken there by a monolithic entity known as a Queen Beast in an attempt to save their own world from the Queen and its army of watchers, grotesqueries, angels, giant flying demon babies, whatever they're called. They engaged the mind-destroying song of the Queen and came out triumphant, causing the Queen to break down into an element unknown to Earth science. Angelus was also taken out by the Japanese Air Force, causing her body to slowly deteriorate into the same substance as the Queen. This particle would eventually be called Meso, otherwise known as demonic element. Shortly after this, a small minority of people within the Shinjuku ward in Tokyo started to come down with a fatal disease known as white chlorination syndrome. It got this name due to the fact that people who caught it would chlorinate, their bodies eventually becoming pillars of salt. Some people, instead of chlorinating, would turn berserk and begin attacking people. The reasoning behind this is a little, you know the drill. People who came in contact with particles from the Queen were forced into a pact with a quote-unquote god. Who this god is, no one knows, but it's assumed to be the leader of the Watchers or possibly another queen. This god gives the infected two choices: make a pact and become a mindless red-eyed monster known as a Legion, or reject it and die, turning into salt in the process. So basically, you're fucked either way. So when I was talking about this post-apocalyptic city being covered in snow, that isn't snow. When an infected individual chlorinates, their body will eventually crumble in the same fashion as the Queen Beast, their salty remains floating into the sky and eventually falling as what appears to be snow. During this whole fiasco, a wall was erected around Shinjuku known as the Wall of Jericho. This was used in order to keep the Legion from spreading around Japan or possibly the rest of the world. The government and troops, however, were alerted to a certain individual who was seemingly leading the Legion. This individual was named Red-Eye, and only 5 years after the Wall of Jericho was erected, Red-Eye led his berserk troops and destroyed the wall. Reports say it was destroyed from the inside, many hearing a sound that resembled the Song of the Queen. Now, in Grimoire NieR, there's a picture of Red-Eye. You may not notice it at first glance, but there's something oddly familiar about it.
Holy flipping moly!
This hasn't been confirmed. However, the similarities are just so damn apparent, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Red-Eye is Kaine. This isn't official, remember, but considering how they never find his corpse, it's a very likely possibility. Question is, if it is my boy Kaine, how did he turn into Red-Eye? Is it possible to make a second pact? I guess we'll never find out for sure, unless Automata expands on this. During all of the havoc now slowly crawling its way through Japan, an uneasy military alliance with America is forged, despite warnings from other countries. Through this alliance, the idea of nuking Shinjuku is brought up, and despite opinions in Japan being varied, the rest of the world seemed to be perfectly fine with reminding Japan about the overwhelming power of the glorious US of A. Kaboom! The bomb is dropped! Shinjuku's destruction is heralded as a second Hiroshima tragedy, and before too long, even more nukes are dropped all over Japan, leading the country to become, and I quote, a scorched earth. By this point, Legion has been reported as being completely wiped out across Japan, so you'd think all of our problems would be over, right? Right? Well, guess again, because by nuking Shinjuku and most of Japan, this caused the remnants of Legion to be thrown into Earth's atmosphere, making its way to China, one of the most heavily populated countries on the planet. Oh dear. As it would turn out, the disease is quite similar to a zombie infection, if that gives you a decent idea of how it works. But wait, I hear you cry, saliva frothing at the mouth. Whatever happened to Angelus? Did her body burn up as it fell to the ground? Boy, that's an answer I'd sure like to know. Well, I guess I have no choice, you cute little fuck. When I first saw this scene, I was positive Angelus burnt up. I mean, with the amount of dandruff that's falling off her, you'd kind of assume that for yourself, I'm sure. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Angelus did plummet all the way to the ground floor, her corpse still intact, and this was taken away by military scientists for further experiments. After many years, they finally had a breakthrough. Angelus's corpse was proof of a multiple world theory, which states there's another world in a different universe or dimension. During research on this multiple world, an attack was commenced on a top secret facility. Angelus's corpse was stolen, but by who? Not even the Grimoire covers it, but it states religious groups on North America were possibly behind it. This particular line interests me a fair bit. Reporting on the incident becomes unclear and then stops completely. Why did it stop completely? I'm hoping, praying, that Automata expands on what happened to Angelus's corpse as one of the few important details that isn't covered completely within the Grimoire. I've read a theory that these two Automata characters, Adam and Eve, might have a connection due to Eve's cult tattoos and both of their red eyes and draconic armour. But at the moment, theorising is all we can do. To this, well, there's still a lot of information I need to get across, but I'm not going to drop it all at this moment. After all, there's still a few surprises I want to keep for later, and where's the fun in just spoiling it all now? So the prologue is over, and whoa, we're taken thousands of years into the future where Papa NieR is somehow wandering around. And Yona is alright? Kind of? I mean, she still has the sniffles, but other than that, everything seems to be okay. And remember all the stuff that happened in the prologue? Well, do me a favour and forget all of that for now. No, seriously, forget all about it. I won't be revisiting it for a while. NieR explains to us that humanity is now on the brink of global extinction, and all they can do is just sit back and wait for the ticking clock of time to finish them all off. But despite all of this, the places that NieR visits and inhabits don't look that terrible. The guy has a nice house, the village seems to be thriving, and the surrounding towns seem like a place I'd visit for my holidays. Is this a criticism? It's difficult to say. By painting the post-apocalypse as some fantasy medieval society, it doesn't really give us the impression that these people are on the brink of extinction. Yet I still love it. I mean, don't you love it? As you can plainly see, the game is environmentally much different from that of Drakengard, and this is all a positive thing, in my eyes. Clemps. Listen here, batty boy. I remember you talking shit about Drakengard 2's colourful environments. Could it be that you're biased towards that particular game? Are you a hypocrite? No! I feel like part of the reason I'm okay with this is its change of world and, heck, franchise. My issue with Drakengard 2's sudden change in environment was down to making Midgard look more like an average family-friendly location, whereas in reality it's anything but friendly. In NieR, the location is Earth, so it would make sense the world is a little more bright, despite what Grimoire NieR has told us about what happened over 2,000 years ago. Admittedly, I love how everything looks, but you think you could turn down the glare a smidge? I'd kinda like to see the game I'm playing.
Hold it! Huh? I said hold it! Over here!
Oh god.
Thanks. So what the heck can you do in this idyllic, comfortable, post-apocalyptic hellscape? Very early on, you're given your first ever fetch quest. I know, fetch quests are kind of, what am I playing here? Flife? Cold hard reality? But what's great about these side quests is that it's exactly what they are. Side quests. They don't impact the main story, and you'll only need to complete a few for weapons, as carrying on from Draken tradition, you'll need to collect every weapon in the game if you want to see that sultry final ending. Despite this, I'd still recommend you do some of these. Not only will some of them make your journey a lot easier, like killing this tough to beat boar, or not so tough if you hide behind this rock like me, which will grant you an incredibly fast mount to easily traverse the wide open plains. They'll also provide you with a ton of character interactions, which is where most of the humour lies in NieR. If you play the game without exploring the side quest, you may stumble upon a laugh or two, but the back and forth banter between two of the central characters never fail to put a smile on my face. Along those lines, some of them will present you with the backstories of seemingly random NPCs, one of the more popular ones being the old lady in the lighthouse. What starts off as NieR doing odd jobs like trying to get letters delivered to her, turns into a somber tale of a town trying to protect her from the harsh truth of her true love's death. Little moments like these are sprinkled delicately into the game like a bit of spice to perk up a dish. Fucking bam! I mean, what else can they throw in there? Oh, I forgot about the playthrough stopper. Friendly tip to anyone playing the game for the first time. Ignore this. Move your analog stick in the direction NieR is leaning. This will save you a lot of stress and bother, and who knows, maybe you'll actually continue your fucking playthrough. So let's go back a bit to the first side quest you get. What it does is introduce you to one of the main questing areas in the game, and it's something you'll get used to pretty quickly. This brings me on to one of my favourite parts of NieR, but also most grating. The soundtrack. When you enter the field, you're blasted with a gorgeous song which really helps bring the place to life. However, I hope you like it, because if you don't, you'll be muting your TV very quickly. The soundtrack loops, which isn't unusual. However, the songs themselves aren't very long, so if you're like me, you'll grow tired of them and eventually irritated. This isn't to say it's bad, in fact it's one of my favourite OSTs of all time, but if I was presented with my favourite meal for breakfast, lunch and dinner, I'd grow bored of it. This is only the case for a few select songs, I'm looking at you, but you'll probably understand where I'm coming from if you played the game. Thankfully, Emmy Evans' fantastic performance as one of the main female vocalists makes it somewhat okay to have the songs nailed directly into your brain. Deliriously excited to hear what she has in store for us in Automata. Of course, there's a reason why I covered all of this now instead of later, because the game presents you with a fairly standard JRPG experience for the first few hours, after being told that the game was dark and soul-crushing, only to be presented with a fairly comfortable ride of no harsh turns here or there. I was wondering whether or not I was playing the right game. Rest assured, I'm positive this was intentional. Allowing the player to fall into a false sense of security before dropping them into a large vat of liquid suffering is a solid way to make sure that when the pain hits, it hits. Moving back to our lovable shriveled prune, he's still being a faithful father to his sick daughter Yona. It's up to Papa NieR to make a living doing odd jobs in order to pay for Yona's disease. What's nice about this village is sometimes when you're running through, you'll hear the villagers voice their concerns about Yona's well-being, and even wish NieR the best of luck.
Hey, how's it going?
You tell that daughter of yours to get better soon.
A small detail which gives lifeless NPCs a bit of, well, life. What I find really messed up about NieR making a living in order to pay for Yona is what happens to his counterpart, Brother NieR. In a short story called The Red and Black, it's absolutely canon that Brother NieR at the age of 15 was persuaded to sell his own body to a man living in Seafront in exchange for money. Whilst out on a mission to destroy shades, the man coincidentally is part of the group sent out to dispose of them. Brother NieR takes this as an opportunity to kill the man for making him go through with the act. Sounding familiar to anyone? No? Ringing any bells? Whilst killing this man, Brother NieR picks up on how similar it feels killing a human to Shades. Just the kind of mindset you'd expect from a character who spawns from this particular series. This, to me at least, cements the idea that Brother NieR has the more canonical timeline. That isn't to say that Father NieR's timeline is non-canon, but the brother has a lot more weight to his backstory. You can't really imagine a naive Father NieR agreeing to have sex with a strange man for a fistful of cash. He'd probably just kill the fucker right then and there. But hell, at worst it just means one of the characters has a less fleshed out backstory, which which if you think about it is the game in a nutshell. Cut out the backstory and put it in a book so old Clemps can dig through it and fill in the blanks. During these introductory missions, we're introduced to an important character in the story named Popola, the leader of the village. Her twin sister Devila also leads alongside her, however she's usually off doing her own thing. Upon returning home after a few fetch quests, NieR tells Yona about a particular flower called a lunar tear. This flower is said to grant the wish of anyone who finds it. A fairy tale to most perhaps, but not to a little girl who would do anything to recover from her illness. When NieR returns home again, he notices Yona has gone missing. Popola tells NieR to head to the Lost Shrine, a location where lunar tears are said to grow. After traversing through this slightly dull dungeon, we reach the main room, where we find Yona and are introduced to our first proper boss fight. This is a decent time to talk about the gameplay changes to NieR compared to the older titles. In Drakengard, the gameplay was very stiff and left a lot to be desired. Magic was a slight saving grace, but overall a lot of the enjoyment came from the aerial battles. In NieR, however, gameplay is solely on the ground, and compared to Drakengard, man, it's a lot more satisfying. Note, I said satisfying and not good. For me, personally, the gameplay is serviceable. I never found myself bored of it, mainly due to how ludicrous spilling the blood of your enemies felt. Your dodge is responsive, your attacks have weight behind them, but there isn't much to do in terms of combos. What saves the gameplay is the magic system, which is properly implemented when we're introduced to our second central character, the one and only Grimoire Weiss.
Stop! For the love of all that is holy, stop pounding me!
Not only is Weiss...
You will refer to me by my full and proper name.
Fuck you. Not only is Grimoire Weiss a legitimate good source of comedic relief, he also helps you utilize magic. See, NieR doesn't really use magic, it's more like he channels it through Weiss. Magic can range from Wicked Weave fist attacks that are shown in the opening. There are your basic magical projectiles which can be used to counter enemy magic, which opens up a whole new form of gameplay which is kind of unique to NieR, or at least a game which practices action combat. It kinda turns into a bullet hell, which is fine. I mean, I love bullet hell games, it just definitely feels like it needs a lot more polishing. There's my personal favourite, which ironically requires the least amount of work. It just looks hella flashy and gives off the false impression that I'm good at games. Weiss, wouldn't you know it, managed to get amnesia due to being broken out of his stasis a little too roughly. A good excuse for us to gather magic instead of having all of them presented to us in the start, and it leaves for some decent plot twists along the way. When we take down the boss guardians Hansel and Gretel, we rescue Yona and escape the shrine before the door crumbles. She laments not being able to find a lunar tear, and much to NieR's horror, the black scrawl starts to slowly move up her arm, causing Yona to be bedridden yet again. NieR and Weiss have a heart-to-heart about Yona's disease, and Weiss brings up the fact that if he had means of curing her, he would. A nice little line to show players that Weiss isn't just a stick in the mud. He's a grumpy old book with a heart of gold. NieR goes to speak to Devila, who notices something interesting about our new floating friend.
Wait, you're Grimoire Weiss? Oh, that is so cool! He's the white book mentioned in the song I was singing. When the great black book, Grimoire Noir, plunges the world into chaos, the white book, Grimoire Weiss, will appear with his sealed verses. He will then vanquish Grimoire Noir and restore harmony to the world. Or so the legend goes.
Hold on. If this is the Grimoire Weiss, the holy book from legend sent to defeat an ancient evil, why on earth is this your response?
Oh, that is so cool!
It's like if Big Man J dropped down to shame me on my fascination on the human butthole, and all I have to say is,
Holy moly!
NieR gets it into his head that because Weiss can essentially cure all evil as long as he has all of the scattered sealed verses, the assumption is if he gathers all of them, Yona has a chance of being cured. I mean, what other alternative does he realistically have? Popola gives us a lead despite her slightly apprehensive attitude at one of her villagers chasing shadows, so we head to a village called the Eyrie, a village which has closed off trade routes with other villages due to the fear of the outside world and, well...
Strangers! Go away!
Just being a bunch of prats, really. After being told to essentially fuck off by the village chief, we head off, but not before we're rudely introduced to one of my favourite characters in all of Taro's work.
Hands off the flowers.
Oh, right.
That's, quite the outfit. Is she a shade?
Really? Sure, why not? Okay. Okay.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, and to share the video around if you enjoyed it. If you're looking for some more Clemps content to watch whilst I'm editing the next part, then I recently did a collab video with my friend Pokey discussing the Final Fantasy VII remake. Go check it out, it's good shit. See you all in part 2.
Well, the sex jokes have definitely, you know, turned up a notch. I mean, sure, why not? Cool. Okay. Sex jokes and girls wearing next to nothing. Cool. And the two redheads that we clearly see in NieR Automata in that village. Cool. Alright. NieR Analysis Part 2. Well, that explains.
Hey everyone, welcome back to part 2 of my NieR analysis. If you haven't already watched part 1, then I heavily recommend you do, or you'll be pretty lost. And speaking of part 1, I feel it's important to correct a couple of mistakes I made, as I don't want misinformation spreading around due to my video. If you remember the scene where I spoke about Red Eye resembling Kaine, this is false. The picture isn't from Grimoire NieR at all, which proves how you should always double check your sources. Secondly, Angelus didn't plummet to the ground floor, instead she was impaled on Tokyo Tower and was retrieved from there. Also, if you were wondering who animated this fantastic new intro, then you must go check out the incredibly talented Volta Bass. It's almost a crime how animators as talented as he is have this little subscribers, so please go check him out and send love his way. His Twitter is down in the description as well. Right, I don't want to keep you any longer, so let's jump straight back into the fray. At the ending of part 1, I left you with the introduction of a new central character, Kaine. But before we go a little deeper into the mentality and biology of our new heroine, you may have noticed this lumbering fuck crawling over to interrupt a squabble that broke out a little while before. This colossal shade is known as Hook and has a dark connection to Kaine's past.
You're gonna pull out your teeth and cram them up your ass!
And as much as I love Kaine, sometimes the vulgarities written into the script come out a little, I think try-hard edgy is the best word to use here, though I'm sure that was the point.
Don't stare your eyes out and piss in sockets.
The fight with Hook doesn't last all that long, as Kaine uses one final burst of energy to blind the beast in one eye, causing it to slink away to tend to its wounds. Weiss comments on the fact that Kaine is possessed by a shade, allowing her to wield magic. And that isn't all that Kaine keeps secret from the world. If you pay attention to some dialogue text later into the game, you'll note that people fear Kaine and mock her for her differences. What they mean by this is Kaine's hermaphroditism. Kaine possesses female and male genitals, and the game handles it in the best way possible. By not bringing attention to it at all, it's merely hinted at, only being confirmed by the director himself later in an interview. Though I should probably bring up the fact that not everything was down to Taro. The co-writer Sawako Natori played a big part in making NieR and Draken the experiences we received. She was the individual in charge of the script writing, and I assume Taro's direction plays a large part in the script's many dark paths, so a lot of Kaine's backstory is down to her. What's fantastic about the aforementioned interview with Taro and Natori regarding Kaine's gender is how little Taro wanted to draw attention to it. This is exactly how I believe gender and sexuality should be approached in video games or media in general. And this is definitely a personal thing rather than a definitive statement. I can see you all tugging at your collars right now. Clemps, stop. Oh god, what are you doing? Fucking stop! Taro was quoted saying, "To me, Kaine being a hermaphrodite wasn't really a point of importance, since people like that do exist in reality. We just don't know about them." I was actually surprised it garnered so much attention after the game was released. There's a similar quote about another one of his character's homosexuality, who for now shall not be named. If we compare this to current-day BioWare, a company who proudly scream from the high heavens that their game includes LGBT characters, please believe us, oh please God believe us, the difference is obvious. If we look around, we can definitely see homosexuals, few in number they may be. I'm not trying to say don't discriminate or anything like that, just people like that exist, it's simply the way the world works. When Taro says I'm not trying to say don't discriminate, I have a feeling he's not trying to tell you to discriminate or that it's okay, it's that he's not trying to shove his opinion down your throat, and I massively appreciate that as a player. Anyways, I'm going to drag myself away from that topic, but we'll be revisiting it later when we meet another character who warranted a direct answer from Taro. After leaving Kaine by herself to recover, we head back to the village, and the story is kind of put on hold for a bit. We're sent to do odd jobs in Seafront, which in the grand scale of things is a glorified side quest hub, but it looks pretty as fuck, so I'm not exactly complaining. Things start to pick up again. We're sent to strengthen our weapons due to the increasing number of shades that are lurking in the shadows near Seafront and the village. When we reach the intended location, the scrap heap, we're introduced to a couple of minor characters, Jacob and Gideon.
Jacob, I'm hungry.
Shut your fucking mouth!
NieR is sent off to collect materials due to their mother not coming back from her scrap collecting. Reaching the end grants us a nice boss fight where it's obvious Taro hasn't fallen out of love with his fourth wall breaking just yet.
It's working! Really, the mouth. Such an obvious weak point.
Oh heck yeah, I've played video game. It's also worth pointing out that the sealed verses are meant to be finding as a shot-in-the-dark remedy to cure Yona's disease are coincidentally found around each boss we kill. Talk about lucky. Upon defeating the defense mechanism, we find the mother, dead, supposedly running away to live with her secret lover in peace, away from her children. I mean, can you blame her?
Mom was always so frustrated, you know? Torn between her duty to us and her heart.
We found this next to her.
I know this song.
It smells like her. Damn it. I'm not gonna
That's
cry.
the ending thing.
Gideon sees me like this. Damn it.
Parting from the boys and unlocking the option to upgrade our weapons with the right materials, we're sent back to the area where the village is being attacked by shades. We reunite with Kaine and Hook, who appears to be having just the best time ever.
Is that Phantom thingy? He's got a tail. I have no idea
The
what
battle
that
with
thing
Hook is an annoyance for sure. When you use your finishing blow on certain body parts, he'll jump over to another part of the area, which means navigating this maze of a town. If you've played the game enough, you'll be able to get your way across easier, but as you can see here, half of the boss fight was spent fighting with my lack of direction. When Hook is nearing defeat, he exhales a hallucinatory gas that causes Kaine to hear a voice she hasn't heard in many years.
Kaine, it's me, Grandma.
When Kaine was a little girl, she had a grandmother. The foul-mouthed old woman was named Kali, or Curly in Replicant. A vulgar yet loving old lady, she protected Kaine from the cruelty of others and taught her about her inner strength and outer strength, giving her the motivation to keep pushing forward. She even made her a wreath made of lunar tears, the legendary flower that most people could live their entire lives without seeing one. But Kali had somehow achieved the impossible. They lived their lives in a strange variation of peace, with comfort at home but ostracization out in the village due to Kaine's physical differences. And as the years went on and Kali's health started to deteriorate, most of her responsibilities laid on Kaine's shoulders. However, on one seemingly normal day, Kaine returned home to see it ablaze. A large shade tortured the aging Kali underfoot as it laughed at Kaine's inability to stop it. This shade was Hook.
Why go on living anymore, Kaine?
Is that it?
Hmm?
Are you done talking?
Kaine, don't speak to your grandma like that.
You're going to stop talking now. And then I'm going to walk over to you and very carefully extend my hand, reach into your chest, and pull out your fucking heart!
After Hook is killed off for good and Kaine is close to death, NieR's voice somehow brings her back from the brink. This scene, while sweet to an extent, is definitely a good argument as to why Brother NieR would make an overall more suitable protagonist. The way Papa NieR spouts off about how he and Kaine are friends now and his general body movements come off as incredibly awkward, especially for a 39-year-old man.
Yes. You and I are friends now.
Ugh, maybe I'm alone here? I don't know. It just feels like if an older gentleman rescued me and delivered that line, I'd laugh in his face, then promptly vomit. Anyways, I'm picking nits. Upon rescuing Kaine, she brings up the fact that she knows a king who suffers from the Black Scrawl. I mean, who doesn't? And he and his people might have come up with a cure since her absence. So, on that note, we head towards the bizarre desert city of Facade, a city which now welcomes Kaine in with open arms due to saving one of their children from a pack of wolves back in the day. Facade is a city composed of citizens who speak a strange language and follow a few strict set of rules. Sorry, did I say a few? I meant a few fucking thousand. One of these rules is to wear a mask that covers your face. The explanation as to why is never directly stated. Maybe it was a gag that eventually turned into a gimmick. When we enter the city, we're introduced, kinda, to a character named Fira, a young girl who was sent to Facade by disgraced parents due to her face becoming disfigured due to burns. And because of Rule 32, she isn't allowed to speak due to not having land identification. I'm not sure if this rule is specifically for people living in Facade, because NieR and friends seem to be perfectly fine having a chat if Fira guides us around the town for what seems like 10 bloody hours. After we finally stop following Fira around, we're told that the king has passed away due to the scrawl, making a lot of the journey ultimately pointless. However, there's a slight comedic scene where we find out that the Prince of Facade has gone missing in a location called the Barren Temple, and that Rule 83,348, if the prince goes missing, find him straight away, and Rule 50,527, only royalty may enter the temple, contradict each other. Kaine, coincidentally, knows of a rule that allows her to bend the rules a little due to the city being in debt to her. And so we're off to the Barren Temple. Upon this playthrough, I noticed something familiar with the boss design. Doesn't this boss, and hell, these obstacles, remind anyone of the gargoyle cubes from the Draken series? A nice little reference for anyone who kept their eyes open. Completing this dungeon introduces us to another minor character whose importance will open up more as the game continues. For now though, he serves as another excuse for a cheeky reference. Oh heck yeah, I've played a video game. So the prince, now king, is saved, yay! Being in debt to NieR requests they make a new rule to allow citizens to veto rules that they don't like, yay! We can finally go to a section of the game where I'm not just recapping the story, can actually go into depth about something, fucking yay! When NieR returns home, he has a dream. Oh boy, here we go. The dream isn't displayed to us visually and we're instead required to read and visualize it for ourselves. Fair enough, I don't have an issue with this. However, when we eventually get to the area his dream was hinting towards the location of another sealed verse, we're introduced to the Forest of Myth. I'm imagining a few of the initiated are rolling their eyes right now. The Forest of Myth is a village in a forest. The inhabitants have all been put into a state of seemingly eternal sleep named the Death Dream. I remember being pretty stoked reaching here for the first time because I'm naturally drawn to forest levels. But much to my disappointment, the real problem with this level is how you complete it. It's a text adventure. Symptoms of the Death Dream are being put into a state of constant sleep and only being able to see and speak through text. Sayonara Woodland Adventures. The basis of this text adventure is to complete a riddle, then continue on. If you fail at said riddle, then I hope you like button mashing to get past all the same text again. Now the cause of the Death Dream is rather peculiar. I'm getting ahead of myself a little, but I feel it's important to introduce this character now rather than later. The Death Dream is being created by a colossal tree known as Sleeping Beauty, or at least it's a tree at first glance. Hold on, Clemps, is there any relevance to these bosses and characters being named after fairy tale characters? Does this link into something? The answer to this is not exactly. Apparently the reasoning behind this was NieR's original scrapped plot, which was about worlds within picture books being real and the heroes of the game needing to defeat villainous characters that come from within the books. How this story eventually evolved into a spin-off to Drakengard is a complete mystery, but I'm happy things ended up the way they did. Anyways, back to the tree. What a lot of people don't realise is Sleeping Beauty is an incredibly ancient sentient network computer being fueled by demonic element. Its purpose is to store the history of the past 2,000 years or so. But why? I'm not entirely sure whether Sleeping Beauty's real appearance is covered by the overgrown tree or if it's the tree itself. But regardless, its existence is crucial for one of the most elusive of endings, ending E. NieR and Weiss managed to break the village out of its slumber, but this definitely isn't the last time we're going to be visiting the Forest of Myth or coming in contact with the mysterious Sleeping Beauty. When NieR returns home, he finds out something that shocks him to his core. Yona has been talking to her fucking boy, the hussy. She begs her father to go visit her new pen pal, as according to the letters, he's sick and in a lot of trouble. NieR accepts, being unable to turn down his beloved daughter.
Oh god, I can see this going badly.
They're like a married couple, it's too cute. When we reach the location of Yona's new friend, the second we swing open the gates, all of the colour from the surrounding area is drained. To begin with, we have no real clue as to why this is the case, but the more we explore and get to know its inhabitants, the more we'll come to realise the artistic reason to making it this way. Something you may notice during this particular segment is what I like to think are callbacks to other games like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, due to the camera changes and general creepy manor aesthetic. Reaching one particular room introduces us to another central character, and one that will eventually become a staple in the franchise itself. The young, soft-spoken boy named Emil is blind. However, he isn't blind due to a defect, he's blind out of choice. He wears a blindfold due to petrifying anyone who makes direct eye contact with him, which makes this courtyard full of statues even more creepy. This is one of the reasons why I believe the monochrome colour scheme works for the manor. It gives off a feeling like time itself has been stopped entirely, which reflects in many victims left in the courtyard, their time unfortunately stolen from them. We're sent to find Emil's butler, Sebastian, to find out more information about the letter that Emil apparently didn't send. Turns out the sender of the pen pal letter to Yona was the butler himself, which is also pretty creepy. He states the reasoning behind this was to ask for help from NieR, but Yona misinterpreted it as something else entirely. NieR accepts the butler's request to escort Emil through the shade-filled halls to a location within the manor that may hold a cure for his eyes. The library, which holds the apparent cure, also holds an enemy which looks very similar to our floating friend Vice. Grimoire Rubrum is fairly easy to take down, but it opens up a lot more questions about Vice's origins and who the book even is. If there are other grimoires, what are their functions? What is their purpose? We'll find out soon enough.
Fuck, this book is a real asshole!
Incredible! As it would turn out, the information stored within Grimoire Rubrum wasn't a cure for Emil, but more so a cure for individuals who went through the petrification process. So for now, we leave Emil's mansion. The scene we get before leaving to the village, however, is one of my personal favourites. Maybe I'm biased because it's another Kaine scene, but they allow us to see a different side to her than we have before. She empathises with his hatred of his eyes due to being ashamed of her own body in the past. It's just really well directed and hits me on so many levels. The physicality of the scene is wonderful. The way she moves her hand here is something you never expect from an individual as violent as Kaine, proving to us through a physical gesture that there's so much more to her than meets the eye. She allows Emil to touch the shade part of her body, then whispers a request into his ear, referring to the shade. He visibly flinches at this, and for now, this is all we're going to get.
Hopefully it was nothing inappropriate for a young man of his age.
The truth, hussy!
And after that amazing scene, we're sent back to the village, where Yona's sniffles send NieR on a seemingly innocent fetch quest to gather some herbs to ease her coughing. However...
Marijuana!
Emil.
So much pressure. Oh god, there's so many of them.
So many what?
Get out. Get out of the village. The shades are coming.
It's at this stage in the game where the seemingly comfortable JRPG experience is torn from under our feet and the suffering is slowly being drip-fed into our systems.
The hell's going on?
No time. Get everyone into the lot. Someone make sure Yona's safe!
Don't worry. I'll go and get her.
Within minutes of the shades breaking into NieR's quiet little village, a behemoth-sized shade named Jack of Hearts breaks the protective gate and begins its rampage.
We can't let him get to the library no matter what!
This is all the NieR soundtrack, so what's up?
Within the library, Emil is fighting back the shades via means of petrification, but Jack isn't ready to keel over and defeat just yet. After slamming his ass into the basement, you'd think victory is all but assured, right?
Give me the key!
Right!
Nani?
Fuck.
Oh, let's break it! Damn! Oh, time to accelerate!
Dear God.
Without a doubt, this was a point in the game where I started to question what the fuck was going on. Something you may notice right off the bat is the resemblance of our main character and the Shadowlord, leader of the Shades. This becomes especially apparent if you look at Replicant's version, which resembles the younger counterpart, and if I can speak freely, just looks miles more interesting. With this though, there's no denying that the Shadowlord and NieR have a connection. Then with the reveal of the aforementioned Grimoire Noir, who we've met at a previous point in the game, well, it definitely makes you think, doesn't it? Vice and Noir have what I'm assuming to be a telepathic conversation where yet again the physical acting is on point for an entire cutscene where the characters in question are fucking books.
No, I cannot. I will not.
Oh, it's the guy from Final Fantasy
The time
XIII
has
too.
come for us to create a new and perfect world.
NieR tells Weiss that both of the books are servants of the Shadowlords, and since they have collected all of the sealed verses, they could fuse together to, and I quote, set free shades to the world. He even lets on to the fact that NieR finding Weiss and being told to collect the sealed verses were all set in motion by the Shadowlord. Weiss, ultimately confused by the current events, begins to hear the voices of his companions calling him back, one in particular being the Oscar-worthy performance of Kaine.
Start making sense, you rotten book, or you're gonna be sorry. Maybe I'll rip your pages out one by one, or maybe I'll put you in the goddamn furnace. How can someone with such a big smart brain get hypnotized like a little bitch, huh? Oh, Shadowlord, I love you, Shadowlord. Come over here and give Weiss a big sloppy kiss, Shadowlord. Now pull your head out of your goddamn ass and start fucking helping us!
The rest of them turn my stomach a little with the whole power of friendship vibe they have going on, but Weiss eventually breaks free of NieR's control.
Weiss!
Good to see you, Kaine. Although I don't think anyone has ever accused me of being a little bitch before.
We must unite. We must become as one.
I don't like you.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Ouch!
In a final act of desperation, NieR sends an attack hurtling towards Weiss, but NieR takes the blow. The Shadowlord wins the fight and takes off with an unconscious Yona. Not only is NieR unable to fight, but Kaine is realizing time is running out for her as well, as the Shade is about to take over her body. She requests to be petrified in front of a basement door, stopping Jack from making his escape and the Shade from taking over.
No more crying, okay?
Okay.
Grow strong.
What's wrong with your face?
Never lose hope. Weiss.
Spare me the goodbye, hussy. I imagine it will take more than this to kill you.
I doubt it.
He literally called her a hussy.
Welcome to NieR, 5 years in the future after Yona's kidnapping. This is where the game really comes into its element, and it's a shame because I know for a fact many people dropped it before this point. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering why Papa NieR is now wearing dirty briefs on his head, and the honest answer is, they kind of make him look cool. Maybe they had no idea how to differentiate this Papa NieR with the time skip version. Again, this is something Replicant did much better than Gestalt. Now the game has changed its motive. Instead of hunting for a cure for Yona, we're hunting for Yona and a cure for Kaine. Before Popola hands us a letter from Emil stating he may know a cure for Kaine's petrification, NieR brings up the fact that it's as if Popola hasn't aged a day since the first time he met her. But she brushes it off as an embarrassing compliment. Surprisingly, this is a pretty sly little nod to events that will later unravel. Upon reaching Emil's mansion for the second time, he tells us he's found some information about a room in the manor called the Planning Room, which might be able to grant Emil the power to harness all forms of magic, which can not only revive Kaine, but might be able to grant him the ability to cure his eyes. I also feel like it's a good point to bring up how on earth magic is even a thing in this universe, as I forgot to bring it up in part 1, when I brought up the fact that Angelus's corpse released a particle into the world known as demonic element. Well, by harnessing demonic element, scientists were able to develop magic. Note how a lot of the magic used in the game is blood red, just like Angelus herself. We're led to the courtyard where the secret entrance to the manor is revealed, and hello? Well, this is getting more and more suspicious by the minute. Turns out the manor was a front this whole time. Back in the era after the Queen Beast fell, a group of who I assumed to be scientists and military personnel were involved in using demonic element in order to make weapons to combat the waves of Legion that was slowly spreading across the map. The method they used to make these weapons, however, were immoral. 2 human children, codenamed Number 6 and Number 7, were experimented on in order to make this perfect weapon. Eventually, Number 6 was a supposed success, but due to leaving her human heart within the finished product, she went berserk, almost destroying the facility in the process. The human child, Number 7, was quickly given the ability to petrify anything that came in contact with his eyes, allowing the skeletal beast to be kept out of harm's way. Number 6 was named Halua, and was Emil's one and only sibling.
My sister. Thank you, Halua.
This is some Resident Evil shit right here.
Good God.
Emil's a chick?
Welcome back, Emil. You've been through a lot.
But my body...
Yeah, I know.
I can't stand to be with you when I look like this.
I know.
What did I
Okay,
tell
so
you?
he's the guy. Gotcha.
We're here for you.
So his sister's dead.
matter what.
That had the head of Emil. Gotcha. Or did they fuse as one? What the fuck happened?
Oh my god, look at all of you! Thank you to every subscriber, new and old, for continuing to support my dream of entertaining people. Thank you to everyone who shouted me out, and you know exactly who you are. You're the lifeblood of this channel, and I wouldn't have gotten this far without you. Hugs and kisses, and I'll see you all in part 3.
Hugs are okay, no kissing, please. Okay, guys, before you start going off at me, that scene, what happened? Did the sister die? Did they fuse? Because the sister had the face of Emil with all the chains and stuff. So what happened? Did they fuse into one? Did the sister die? Did he absorb the sister? Like, what did I miss? I'm not stupid. I'm just... Fusion? Okay, so they fused. Okay, thank you. Alright, guys, like, come on, guys, give me a break. Don't be mean. I'm human. I'm human. You, be reasonable here. This is a lot to take in. Dragon Ball Z fuse. No, they didn't do the fusion dance. They weren't cringy enough for that. Alright, let's get started. NieR Analysis Part 3. And then we can contemplate the absolute mountain of good games that we want to play. As you saw with the Game of the Decade thing, we've played good games, but there's so many good games we haven't played. So let's focus on getting this community as big as possible so we can stream 5 days a week. And then maybe we will keep on top of the games. Alright, NieR Analysis Part 3. Go!
And welcome back to the third installment of my NieR analysis. Click these cheeky links here to watch part 1 and 2 respectively. Apologies if the majority of this is story recapping, but I feel it's not only important for people who want to get into this series but maybe don't have the money to splash out on a 7th generation console, I also feel it's necessary in order to give context to a lot of the stuff I analyse. Besides, NieR analysis and story recap just ain't catchy. So with that out of the way, it's time to rev up the engines once again.
Can you see my face?
And that's how Emil was born?
Almost immediately after Emil digivolves into Skelemil via fusing with his sister Halua, he seems to have gotten over the initial shock about losing his body, the fatherly comfort or bishy boy charms emanating from both versions of NieR more than likely helping him through it. If you want to learn more about Halua, there's a short story called The Stone Flower, which is fully translated on the NieR wiki, which is just... oh no. To give you all a short summary, we'll be here till doomsday, it's a story about Halua and Emil's gradual transformation into weapons, the adults taking advantage of the children's naivety and Halua desperately trying to protect Emil's innocence. Recently, due to Taro's rather interesting way of concealing his identity, the new body that Emil's consciousness inhabits is more than definitely the poster child for the series as a whole. On a side note, it's strange watching multiple interviews of Taro and seeing the mouth glued shut, only to skip to the game and oh my god, I forgot it even had movement.
I sure hope seeing me doesn't petrify her. You know, in fear.
That's our Emil.
Shortly after this, we get to watch Emil's new magic in action as he releases Kaine from her stone prison.
Wait, that thing is still down there?
But we dispose of him really easily, so yeah, just fuck off, Jack. When Emil is shouting to Kaine to wake up from her 5-year slumber, it's important to note she first believes his voice to be her grandmother's, as before she met with NieR and crew, she was the only person who would treasure Kaine being alive. But as she wakes up, she's met with 3 misfits who are now the 3 forces who also spurn her to continue living. It's also pretty sweet how Kaine recognises Emil straight away despite his new form, showing the two have a strong emotional connection.
Good to see you, Kaine.
This song, this is NieR Automata.
It's what we've all been saying. But not long after Kaine is brought back, both Poplar and Deviler have a rather cruel but understandable request. The villagers are scared of Emil and Kaine and don't want them hanging around the village. It's not necessarily Popelar and Deviler's fault, but after the Shade attacks on the village, it'd be a little unusual for the villagers to be totally fine with letting a couple of strangers who look like a floating human corpse and a woman possessed by the very thing that helped kill friends and family members roam through the village prejudice-free. Both Emil and Kaine understand this, but NieR isn't having any of it. He realises that even 5 years ago, Kaine would sleep outside of the village, but he was too focused on helping Yona to notice. As the screen fades to black, we see a darker side to our protagonist than we've seen before, you know, minus all of this. He mentions wanting to grab and strangle Popelar due to her decision, but he notes that they were only doing this for the sake of the village, and that anger won't solve anything. He actually apologises the day after for flying off the handle, but Popelar aggressively defends his right to feel angry over his friend's treatment. This tiny little segment is easy to skim over, but it's pretty important, as one of the only few scenes where we get to read and understand exactly what's going on in our protagonist's head. After apologies are swapped, Popelar gives us a huge breakthrough into the location of the Shadowlord's current whereabouts. She tells us to take a boat and travel to the Lost Shrine through a secondary entrance due to the previous entrance now being blocked off. Apparently the location of the Shadowlord is linked into this place, so this isn't exactly something NieR and crew can simply ignore. When we reach the main room where we originally met Weiss, we see that one of the Guardians, Gretel, is still alive and kicking. Something else to keep in the back of your mind is that when Gretel crashes through the ceiling, we hear it speaking in a language that we can't completely make out. Regardless of this, we take down the smaller shades surrounding it and take a shot at finishing the Guardian, but it's all psych and causes Kaine to just spill all of the jam. It's after this that we really finish Gretel off, and we rush over to check on Kaine. But oh no, the seals storing away the QB burst free from Naruto. Okay, I'm just gonna stop that one right there. The shade that possesses Kaine takes full control at this point as she's unable to hold it back. We engage in a reasonably challenging boss fight where she jumps around like a mad woman possessed, oh wait, and pummels your unprepared butthole with waves upon waves of magical bullets. Snapping Kaine out of her possession grants us a fantastic performance by Julianne Taylor, the voice actress of Emil.
If you transform again, we'll just stop it again, as many times as it takes. I don't care how tough it is, we're gonna get you back. I like sleeping outside because I'm with you, Kaine. I'm able to ignore my appearance and keep going because of you. I'm weak and sad and lonely, but somehow you make me strong. You're my friend and I need you, so you can't go away!
Something else I want to quickly point out before I move on is how NieR has some really tight voice acting all in all. Liam O'Brien nails the character of Weiss, though sometimes I can't shake the fact that his delivery strongly reminds me of one of O'Brien's previous characters.
You are not prepared! Stop pounding me!
We find a mysterious fragment at the very end of the room and bring it back to Popelar, who claims it's part of a key to the Shadowlord's castle. The part we obtained was named the Stone Guardian, referencing Gretel. There's the Law of Robotics, located at the Junk Keep, and the Memory Tree, referencing our old friend Sleeping Beauty. The other two, Sacrifice and Loyal Cerberus, are a mystery to Popelar, but we'll obviously run into them during our story progression. We're given the option to visit either the Junk Keep or the Forest of Myth, which is nice. It's nice because in order to unlock the various endings, you'll need to repeat these segments, so it's good to mix things up even by a little bit. I decided to go for the Junk Keep first, and as soon as we enter, we're shown a flashback from 4 to 5 years ago of the two brothers, Jacob and Gideon. As Gideon rushes off to harvest a piece of scrap, a large robotic foot comes into frame, appearing to cause a large amount of debris to fall onto Jacob, crushing him. Gideon, distraught at this, rushes to help, but what we aren't shown in the shot is Gideon ripping his brother's arm off in a desperate attempt to free him. This is the true downfall of Gideon, and the beginning of his complete mental breakdown. During this traumatic event, he notices the robotic life form, and from that moment on, he blames everything that has happened to his family on machines. When we meet up with Gideon in the current day, we see he's missing an arm. This is down to the extreme guilt he felt after tearing off his brother's arm, so he began to damage his own, eventually having it completely replaced with a mechanical one. When we originally talk to him, he seems relatively normal. NieR asks him about the whereabouts of Shades, but Gideon is more interested in robots, allowing a little break in his seemingly normal persona. Gideon hands us a weapon, however it's not exactly in good condition. He sends us down to the basement level where we take out a few robots in order to receive some memory alloy to upgrade it. Part of me would like to think you didn't even need memory alloy to begin with, and Gideon was just sending you there to assist in his revenge. After this, well, we've got to be fucking patient. He can't fix it in an instant, not like it's a video game or anything. Whilst waiting for Gideon, I decided to let NieR go back and visit Popelar, where she tells us we have some mail waiting for us, ever the helpful one. Turns out we have a royal summon from the King of Facade who's getting married. And before I jump into the wedding itself, I feel it's important to talk about something within the surrounding area facade that are pretty important, and I didn't go into much detail in part 2. The wolves. I brought up the fact that Fira was attacked by wolves, but I didn't go into detail about how they infest the desert area surrounding the city. They become a very well-known presence, and even on your first visit to Facade, we notice the leader of the pack appears to be a shade. Upon revisiting Facade, the interesting shade named Rock plays a much more interesting role. And speaking of important roles, we meet the king, where he introduces us to his new wife-to-be. Probably worth mentioning that the king is now aged 15 and his fiancée, Fira, is 10, and she's somehow taller than everyone in the room. What do you feed people in your city? Before the night of the wedding, we start talking to the party members about their opinions on the whole event, or their well-being in general. Kaine predictably doesn't want any of it, but Emil seems quite fond with the idea of marriage, even stating he'd be willing to if he met a girl who could accept him for who he is. He asks NieR about his wedding, but NieR shrugs it off, saying it was a long time ago and it isn't important. Emil notes that it's important to him. Oh boy, here we go. Emil is gay. Huh? Why? What? Woo! This is something a lot of people miss, and I can't blame them in the slightest, especially in the version the West got. Due to NieR and Gestalt previously being married, of course the dialogue is going to be different here. In Replicant, Emil discusses brother NieR's potential future marriage and what kind of person he wants to be his bride. Once the brother leaves the room, Emil says that he wants to be his bride. Now before I go any further, it's probably worth pointing out that no, Emil's sexuality doesn't really play a big part in the game itself. There's no big celebration or anything like that, it's just who Emil is. An interviewer asked Taro about the unusual sexual preferences in his games, but Taro responded with how he never intended for these characters to be unusual. It's just how you as a person view them in the real world. The line where Emil talks about finding a nice girl to marry is, well, it would obviously lead a lot of people to believe he's heterosexual, or at least bisexual, but nope. Even the interviewer asked if these feminine feelings were spurned on by his fusion with Halua, but Taro answered this rather quickly with, no, Emil is gay. Not meaning to spotlight my own sexuality here, but more so using it as an example. But I remember being 12 like Emil and not realising I was into more than one gender. I just thought the feelings I felt towards the same sex were natural or inconsequential and that I was completely heterosexual. But as I'm sure you can all see, as the years went on I gladly embraced my sexuality with open arms and legs. The same can be said for Emil, I'm sure. His feelings towards brother NieR being a crush and his feelings towards Papa NieR being more like a father figure, but that schoolboy crush still somewhat intact. Though that being said, since Emil has been around since the Queen Beast incident, this will make him a 1,470-year-old with the brain and body of a 12-year-old, so I guess he's had a lot of time to think about which chest is best. And the wedding begins. Everything seems to be going along relatively smoothly and the celebrations are in full blast. It's fairly sweet that a short story called A Little Princess focuses exclusively on Fira's adjustment to Facade and her gradual relationship with the prince. Even after the prince saw her face, there was no prejudice. He liked her for who she was, and their relationship bloomed ever since. That is, until a wounded soldier interrupts the festivities, announcing that the wolves are coming.
Oh shit.
Fira!
Fira's death signals the beginning of the king's complete need to wipe out all of the wolves. His advisor tries his best to get the king to act more like his title, but the king is still young, and not to forget, heartbroken. When NieR and co decide to join the young king in his quest for revenge, there's a sweet scene where the advisor and the soldiers pledge their loyalty to the king, the deceased queen, and his quest for revenge, as it's not just the king who wants revenge on the animals, but he still needed to get permission from the city first, as there are rules about this sort of thing after all. NieR helps the young king and his men take down the wolves in their den, and not long after, the king deals the finishing blow on the shade. The musical cue would lead us to believe this is a sad death, but for now, we're not exactly sure as to why. This grants us the next part of the key, the loyal Cerberus. The final scene for this particular segment has the party surrounding Queen Fira's grave, as the king talks about the people of the mask living and dying by their rules, but sometimes rules are there to be broken, which is something he told Fira many years ago. Moving on, Gideon has sent us a letter confirming the weapon has been completed. When we go visit him, he asks another favour of you.
I want you to avenge my brother, the ones in the mountain. That little shade and his robot.
There are shades here?
Kill him. Kill that robot.
Rip him up!
Locating the robot named P-33, from first glance it looks like it's being controlled by the Shade perched on top of its head. Of course, NieR has no time to mess around and we slowly start to take it down. In its second form, it uses some form of magnetism to grant it flight, as it appears to be smashing the roof, causing debris to fall onto our heroes. Of course, we eventually defeat the machine, where we see Gideon's psyche truly break down.
You stupid machine! You killed my family! You took everything from me!
Hitting that thing won't bring your brother back.
But he's dead! And it's this bastard's fault! And hitting it makes me feel better! No one can stop me!
Also, we get the Law of Robotics kill! Next, I decided to bite the bullet and visit the Forest of Myth for the next part, but that being said, there's a lot of interesting things that present themselves to us if we're ready to sit down and read and not just open up an online guide. This time, we're going head on with Sleeping Beauty in the form of another text adventure yet again. And since I've already mentioned Sleeping Beauty being a sentient network computer, the introduction where it talks about gathering humanity's memories like dew and storing them deep in its roots make a lot of sense. We're then shown a trilogy, kinda, of short stories. The first one is about a boy with white chlorination syndrome, hinted at by the lines, "The boy's skin is a shade paler than the bleached hospital sheets upon which he lies." It also mentions the only joy in this boy's hospital life being a young girl that would visit him, however she eventually stops and he dies alone. The next story is very interesting and I'll be returning to it later. It's about a female warrior leading an attack on the Red Eyes. The story mentions she might have a daughter, but her drug-addled mind could possibly be making it up. The story ends with her laughing in the middle of a battlefield, staring up at a large beast that blots out the sky. The third one is about a red dragon who fell from the heavens, but Sleeping Beauty just happened to forget about that. In fact, Sleeping Beauty has been forgetting an awful lot, more than likely due to age. It feels like it's lost its purpose, the memories it once proudly stored being lost, never to be recalled. When NieR and Weiss enter the room, they find a small shade which appears to be consuming memories in the shape of crystals. When NieR slices through the shade, crystals burst from its belly, which leads us to believe this little shade is what's causing Sleeping Beauty to lose its memory. However, it turns out that the little shade more than likely is the tree, possibly manifesting from being a sentient life form created from an otherworldly magic. Either that, or it's a shade that assimilated itself with Sleeping Beauty, becoming a physical shell for the ancient computer. When the shade, or Sleeping Beauty, touches NieR's arm, it reacts with overwhelming surprise and joy since its complete solitude for over 1,000 years. It begins to feel emotions it wasn't designed to feel, and it managed to feel this through NieR. Whether or not it's absorbing new emotions or simply creating them from nothing is up for debate. Apparently, NieR is the key to its release, something which was promised to it many years ago, more than likely talking about its termination. As Sleeping Beauty begins to feel pain, it realises time is running short. Whilst grabbing another part of the key, I love the detail put into this section. As the world of words begins to crumble, so does the text on the screen. The final question it poses for us is who is most important to us in the world, and after that, Sleeping Beauty is satisfied, presumably shutting down. The final part of the key is found in the Eyrie, where Popola was sent a letter by the village chief talking about opening a shop and marketplace within the village that allow many visitors from around the world to come and take a look, essentially opening its arms to strangers for the first time in years. Understandably, this comes off as a bit suspicious, even more so when
You'll be destroyed! All of you! I'm scared. I don't trust anyone.
The marketplace itself isn't exactly strange, and they actually end up selling you things. This all changes, however, when a guard mentions knowing something about the letter, and when NieR tells him his goal is to eliminate every last shade. Many of the villagers are turning into shades and are attacking the party. In this cutscene, we see a supposed shade defending her brother. When Kaine takes her out, her real form is revealed and swiftly enacts her revenge. I feel like Kaine is doing this a lot. At one stage, we see what appears to be Bayonetta summoning an infernal demon, but it turns out to be a collection of the slain shades combining themselves into one grotesque mass, called Wendy. I mean, yeah, looks like a Wendy. Emil seems apprehensive about taking down the creature, as he implies it didn't only absorb shades, but it absorbed the villagers too, though this doesn't really matter to NieR and Weiss. During the fight, Emil succumbs to the will of his friends and fucking Expelliarmuses the frick out of Wendy, and during his second attempt combined with NieR, they manage to kill the beast. But Emil's instincts as the ultimate weapon start to take over, causing him to essentially nuke the entire village, killing bystanders and leaving a crater where Kaine's village used to be.
I killed innocent people. I killed them all.
But you saved our lives.
Then it's all okay! Receiving the final part of the key, dubbed Sacrifice, get it? We can finally enter the Shadowlord's castle, which is located in the exact same area we found Weiss and fought with Hansel and Gretel. Both Deviler and Popeler are here to see us off, as well as passing on gossip that the village is ablaze with the news that NieR is finally off to save Yona. Popeler seems a little apprehensive to see her villager go off, but she lets us go regardless. Breaking the seal to the entrance, we're introduced to one of the nicer looking environments in the game. Definitely not the kind of final dungeon aesthetic I was usually used to whenever I played a JRPG. Now I'm sure a few of you are wondering where on earth this is. I mean, it clearly isn't anywhere near the Lost Shrine, because later into the dungeon we notice we're now in a city. I'm not sure if it's meant to be Tokyo or not. Taro answered this question in an interview, stating that behind the altar there's an elevator that brings you a long way underground, then there's a pathway that leads to the castle. Position-wise, it's located behind the mountains of a lost shrine. These two doves, presumably machines, pose the party a series of 3 questions. The answers are passwords to continue on. Why did humans disappear from the world? How can humans extend their lives, and what is the destination of souls? The answers to these, in order, are because of a black disease, by separating body from soul, and they are placed in their corresponding shells. This is a hint towards the direction the game is going in, the direction being a fucking rabbit hole.
It's the twins from your village.
Popeler, Deviler, what are you doing here?
Hey, any chance you'll just go back to the village?
And down the rabbit hole we go. Deviler and Popeler now stand in our way, but they make it absolutely clear that they didn't want to fight with us. When Weiss begins to question their motives, Popeler snaps at him, claiming he's a traitor. Shortly after, the twins appear to drain Weiss of his powers, only to reveal that they didn't copy anything. More so, they're taking back what was loaned to him. After the battle stops, the twins drop a comment that proves they're closer to the Shadowlord than what was originally thought. They take off, asking NieR to find his own truth about the situation, and in the next segment we're greeted to an unusual room with ghostly figures having what appears to be a gay old time. But it doesn't last all that long, as I'm sure you can guess. Kaine breaks down the next door, only to find something strange hidden behind it. One of the flying shades beckons to the orbs, fusing with them and turning into a ball for some strange reason. Reusing assets, maybe? Taking down ball number 1 introduces us to Mechaballzilla, aka Goose, who's a primary threat for most of our ascension into the castle. Goose is apparently unable to die, but this is only due to the fusion of many shades combined into one entity. When all hope seems lost, our friends from Facade apparently found our whereabouts. They open the next door and force us out, keeping Goose busy so we can save Yona. Finally, we're brought before the twins again, where the biggest twist of the game is unceremoniously dumped on our heads. Deviler and Popeler aren't humans. Well, neither is NieR or Kaine. In fact, the only true human in the room is Emil, though now it's difficult to even call him one. The twins are a couple of androids who have been around since the beginning of humanity's downfall, otherwise known as observers. Androids would later appear in Drakengard 3 and are the primary focus of NieR Automata. These two specifically were created primarily to watch over replicants till their gestalts could rejoin them. What the fuck did you just say, Clemps? You having a stroke, my dude? Gestalts are the original name for shades. Shades are humans, or at least the souls of humans. Replicants are, well, what we originally thought were humans, so people like NieR, Kaine, the villagers, etc. Project Gestalt was a last resort by humanity to keep the race alive, by separating body and soul via touching mass-produced versions of Grimoire Noir. Replicants were originally meant to be shells that Gestalts could rejoin after the White Chlorination epidemic was over. However, due to a rather big error in the system, replicants became self-aware, making it impossible for the Gestalts to fuse with them. This causes a majority of Gestalts to relapse and go berserk. However, it also affects the replicant, in the form of the Black Scrawl. But this isn't the case for many shades, as most completely retain their sanity. Something that a lot of people miss on their first playthrough is how the little shades that you first fight in the game near the village entrance don't attack you at all. They also drop school books. NieR has been slaughtering children. A very fair question to ask is, if Gestalts are mere souls of humans, why can they bleed? Taro answered this, saying that when Gestalts are attacked, their wounds temporarily return return to their human state, which is why they can bleed and die just like a regular human. Something which blew me the fuck away during my research was how much thought went into the little details in this game, specifically the scroll. I'm just gonna transform into Professor Clemps here for a second. You'll remember I mentioned that the black scroll appears to be some kind of text, right? Same applies to when you use magic. The symbols that we see are all part of the celestial alphabet. There are a series of 4 letters from this alphabet that link all of the Drakengard games and NieR together. They were found on the Seed of Destruction that Furiai entered. Some of the seals in Drakengard 2 also have these letters, and finally the boss seals within Drakengard 3. What these stand for are A, C, G and T. Adenine, cytosine, guanine and thymine. All of these are found within DNA. The general consensus seems to be that the Black Scroll is meant to show how the DNA synchronization between Replicant and Gestalt has well and truly messed up. Moving back to Project Gestalt, the fusion between Replicant and Gestalt was meant to be performed with a fusion of Grimoire Vice and Grimoire Noir, hence the line "set free shades to the world." However, due to Vice's memory loss, he's seen as a traitor by Devila and Popola, by not allowing humanity to return to their new bodies. In fact, what's interesting to note here is how Vice was originally human himself. In the short story And Then There Were None, it's read in the perspective of Vice as a young man being put into a room with various strangers in a kill or be killed situation, each with a strange blank book by their sides. All of the people within this room are or were previously children soldiers working for the Hamelin organization. It's also important to note that the Hamelin organization later went on to create Project Gestalt. These children soldiers were given the very first anti-white chlorination syndrome drug named luciferase, as it was more effective with younger patients. The Hamelin organization would proceed to send these children out to vanquish the legions as they could no longer be infected. Within the room is a young woman who he became acquainted with on the battlefield due to saving her from being frozen with fear in front of legions. Vice grew attached to this girl. Later on in this room with no clear exits, a fight breaks out between a man and a woman. The woman slaps the man and the man goes to strike her. However, a black hand reaches out from the book beside the woman and crushes the man. The book that belongs to the man sucks up his corpse, the cover turning aquamarine in colour and a strange face materialising on the front. As voices fill the room, presumably from scientists telling him that only 2 can remain, a bloody battle breaks out. The man we know to be Vice works together with the girl, but she protects him from a vital blow, being impaled by a black spike. As her body was being sucked into her book, he desperately clung onto her hand, begging her not to disappear, but it wasn't enough. Her book turned blood red, the face on the front not resembling hers at all. What's tragic about this is all these years later, Vice couldn't remember the book of the woman he begged not to disappear, even when they were face to face. The man that murdered the girl would eventually be Grimoire Noir. Him and Vice were the last 2 men standing, however the voices never once said that the remaining 2 would leave. The men we know to be Vice and Noir are sucked into their books, and as he learns of his new name, Grimoire Vice, he couldn't stop laughing. Moving back to the final confrontation with the android twins, they want NieR's shell to return back to its rightful owner. I'm sure a lot of you can assume who NieR's body was originally meant to be for. They engage us in battle and we manage to mortally wound Devila. The scene where Devila tells Popola she loves her as her final words is not only heart-wrenching but also another memorable scene that stuck with me long after my first playthrough.
Popola. Let's stop this now.
You want me to stop? You think I have the luxury to stop? You cut down my sister like an animal, and you tell me to stop?
Popola, wait! It doesn't have to—
No one stops! It's way too late to stop! No one stops!
Popola completely breaks down, initiating a massive magical attack that Emil protects the party from. Popola retaliates, but Emil, not wanting to see his friends die, decides to sacrifice himself. He bids farewell to his friends, saying that once he hated his eyes, and now he hates his body, but now he feels there's something else there instead of hatred. Pride. Opala and Emil are gone, and the next scene where Kaine and NieR are silently grieving over Emil's departure is by far my favourite scene in the game, as it shows Taro and Notori have a deep understanding of the character. NieR is crying, Kaine seems defeated. Not long after, she begins to beat up NieR, pinning him to the wall. The 5 seconds we get here is the indication we get towards Kaine's feeling towards him, as they have now evolved into romantic ones. Kaine has never been able to express her emotions well, a lot of the time she comes off as violent. This physical outburst is a way for Kaine to express her emotions. Even Taro in his interview stated this is the most romantic part of the game. It's a fucking perfect way for us to understand how Kaine's thought process works, and further grounds her as one of my favourite characters. Finally though, the long adventure comes to a close. NieR comes face to face with the Shadowlord and Yona is now in clear sight. The Shadowlord is NieR. This NieR. His entire goal was to get the replicant of Yona in order to fuse her Gestalt with it, despite the fact that her Gestalt was relapsing, causing the scroll to appear on the replicant. The Shadowlord was the very first Gestalt to ever keep his sanity after touching Grimoire Noir. Before this, the Hamelin organisation would hand out copies of Noir to survivors, watching them turn into relapsed Gestalts. With the first sentient Gestalt, it was possible to create further stabilised Gestalts, giving humanity another chance to survive. Yona's Gestalt was put on ice as a thank you for helping the project succeed, promising him that her relapsing would be cured. But, after thousands of years, this was obviously a false promise, and the Shadowlord decided to take matters into his own hands. What he didn't take into account, however, was that his replicant would share his same burning desire to rescue his daughter. After beating the Shadowlord, NieR gets to see his daughter for the first time in 5 years. But...
Dad...
Yona.
Yona's Gestalt talks to the Shadowlord, telling him that she doesn't want someone else's body, and that there's another soul in there with her, wanting to see Replicant NieR, implying that if Gestalt and Replicant were to combine now, there would be more than one soul, as Replicants are now sentient. Gestalt Yona tells her father she loves him, as she releases her soul from the Replicant, dissolving into the sunlight. The Shadowlord is understandably not best pleased.
Oh, there. One moment, please.
You okay?
Fine, just fine. Alright, no I'm not.
As much as it pains me to admit, it's time to say goodbye to our good friend Grimoire Weiss. Being pushed past his limit, he decides to give NieR one final chance to finish the Shadowlord off, before sacrificing himself for the greater good. He mentions forgetting about the proper pronunciation of his name, as he's now grown rather fond of Weiss. After avoiding this hellish bullet hell segment, there's a moment where we see NieR having doubts about what he's about to do. He pauses, shakes his head, reaffirming to himself that what he's doing is right, and ends the Shadowlord or the original NieR's life.
Oh God, no.
Oh, please, the girl is fine.
Weiss returns to us for a moment as a disembodied voice, though it won't be long before that goes too. He tells NieR to recall his memories of spending time with Yona to bring her back, and after typing in who she loves more than anyone, she wakes up. The reunion is sweet, but Kaine begins to leave. NieR offers for her to stay with them, but Kaine insists she has other shit to take care of. As NieR goes after her, Yona stops him by asking him to look outside with her. This is a scene created by Notori, and Taro was quoted saying it was an amazingly twisted scene, as he wanted a beautiful moment where they look out onto the sky, but Yona chimed in at the worst possible time when Kaine was taking her exit. I mean, Yona's kind of a little shit. It's like, NieR is mine! But I suppose Yona still has the mentality of a 5-year-old girl, so it kind of makes sense. You'd also think this is supposed to be a happy ending, right? Well, guess again. By killing the Shadowlord, it means that all of the stable Gestalts will relapse, causing a widespread outbreak of the Black Scrawl, meaning the end of all replicants and Gestalts as we know it. Quite the silly sausage, aren't you? After this, we get ending A. In a flashback, Gollum and Walking Disease know how it's pretty sunny today, and the Shadowlord and Yona meet together in what appears to be an afterlife. Wow, is that it? Oh, that's it. I mean, I guess it's only the first ending. Surely they get better after this, right? Spoilers. They fucking do. Oh.
You guys remember when we were playing NieR Automata and I thought for a second, what if we're actually just killing people? not actual robots. Well, apparently that ended up being in NieR, not NieR Automata. And there were no humans in NieR Automata. They were already dead. So in NieR Automata, I'm like, what if we're hacking and slashing humans? Well, yeah, that happened in NieR. In NieR Automata, there are no humans. So what is the point? Good question. Wow. So that gives context to those files that 9S was reading in the Yoha mainframe. But one thing that I actually like, I don't know if you guys noticed, but when the tree was asking him the question of, and I could probably find it, we're at 3118. If I can find the tree. If I can find the tree asks him to answer a question, and it gives him like 3 options. And one of the options basically has your, and then a space, ha. And so you could basically spell out Yoha if you wanted to. So even before NieR Automata, Yoha is kind of there. Pretty messed up. And it makes me... What's the point? That is the point. Aren't we all just a funny bunch? I mean, it explains the time lapse. It explains how they don't age. And it's like, you're a replicant. Well, replicants being a replicant of the human whose soul is no longer in a body that's trying to get in a body while you're killing them. So you're killing the human soul. So, like, that's cool. And even NieR for a moment is like, am I doing the right thing? Yes, I'm doing the right thing. I'm protecting my daughter. Bam. Well, she's a fucking robot and so are you. So what happens after humanity dies? This shit. You kill children at the start of the game. Yeah. It's Undertale all over again.
In a flashback, Gollum and Walking Disease note how it's pretty sunny today, and the Shadowlord and Yona meet together in what appears to be an afterlife.
Fuck!
Wow, is that it? Oh, that's it. I mean, I guess it's only the first ending. Surely they get better after this, right? Spoilers. They fucking do. Oh. After ending A, NieR was lifted pretty high into my favourite games list. You start off the game after Emil rescues Kaine from petrification. There are a number of things new to this segment, but for now I'm going to revisit a story that Sleeping Beauty told us in the Forest of Myth. And since this part of the game is focusing around Kaine, I feel it's a good time to drop it. This is a complete theory on my half, but I feel it makes a lot of sense. Hopefully much better than Kaine being Red Eye. The story about the female warrior fending off the Red Eyes, forgetting about her daughter? I personally believe that this story is referencing Kali, Kaine's grandmother. Now the Kaine and Kali we know are replicants, however, as with every replicant, they must have had a human counterpart at some stage. In the drama CD, Kali is one of the main characters for a little while, being a PTSD-suffering warrior who gained a reputation due to being the woman who fought off a huge majority of the legions. This story irks me a little, like how all of the characters in their human form somehow bump into each other like the world's biggest coincidence, but this is something I can give a pass to. Another thing before I move on is how Kaine was told since she was a little girl that her parents had passed away. This is false, as she's actually a program baby created from Kali, Kali's husband, and a combined analysis of Legion's attack patterns. My guess is Kali adopted this girl, having forgotten her other daughter. At one stage during the drama CD, a bloody incident with a red eye causes Kaine to go into her offensive form, ripping the red eye open. Another hugely important part of this story is the introduction of a man named Masayoshi Yura, someone who forcibly took over the Hamlin organization. The man was sadistic and prone to fits of anger where he'd beat up or in worse cases kill whoever it was who disobeyed him. He was also noted to be especially harsh to Emil, who was obviously alive back then and was part of the Hamlin organization in the form of a weapon. During an incident where a red eye was located around Kali's mansion, Yura ordered his men to kill the beast, but no surprise they couldn't. He then forcibly gives Emil a drug which accidentally causes him to go out of control, making Yura flee from the battlefield, becoming a fugitive. Yura changed his name to Tyran and successfully turned into a Gestalt. However, the government discovered his replicant and destroyed it, meaning Tyran will forever be without his original body, causing him to take control of other people's replicants. One of the replicants he half-possessed was Kaine after the death of Kali at the hands of Hook. This gives off a little bit of insight as to why Kaine is such a violent, hate-filled individual, as she has to be filled with dark emotions or Tyran will take over at any sign of emotional fragility. By the way, I'd like to add that Tyran is pretty much the Leonard's fairy of NieR.
It's home to so many terrible little memories, isn't it, Kaine?
I can't fucking stand this edgy motherfucker. After ending A, you can sometimes hear Tyran talking to Kaine, often mocking her or the things she's killing. Tyran's inclusion to this game is necessary and appreciated, however that doesn't mean I have to like him. He acts like a 13-year-old discovering Gaia Online's roleplay forums, and that just ain't fun to listen to. Another thing that the game flips on its head during the hunt for ending B is the perspective. We've seen the story primarily from NieR's eyes and his frantic one-minded goal to rescue his daughter. Now we get to see the story from the Shade's point of view, which ultimately paints NieR as an unfortunate villain. We get to see the story of Gretel after Hansel's death, getting to know the incomplete Gestalt children and understanding them as equals. We even get to see what Gretel was saying as it encountered us for the second time. But sadly, we know that NieR kills the children and Gretel not being able to protect them and itself. The wolves in Facade even have a more fleshed out story. The wolves' Shade leader, Rock, is bitter about humanity over replicants turning what used to be a forest into a harsh, desolate landscape via unknown means. The Shade seems to believe that replicants in Facade can live beside others, but after soldiers from Facade wiped out a majority of the pack, including youngsters, it causes the Shade to launch a furious counterattack, something we know doesn't end happily for anyone. When the king plunges his spear into the Shade questions what they've done to deserve such a fate. In its final moments, it sees its owner, who he affectionately refers to as his father. The owner must have prioritized his pet's life over his own, thus making the animal into a Gestalt before himself. He asks the creature to think of him now and again, and it's clear from the name Loyal Cerberus, it still does. You want a dog? But you'll do. The Ares story isn't really expanded, however, knowing about the Shade's real identity gives us a little more insight into the Ares xenophobia. A few theories have been flying around about how the Ares might be the only place NieR visits where the population know about the Shade's real identity. If this theory is true, the villagers obviously split with this news, some of them shunning the idea and others gladly accepting it. Some may willingly be giving up their bodies for the Gestalts to enter, or are trying to coexist with them. The final segment we get is probably the most important as far as short stories go. I'm talking about the story of P-33. The story starts off with a Gestalt mother and her child named Khalil being chased into the junk heap by replicants. The mother decides to protect her child, but presumably dies, leaving the child alone. P-33 is hostile to begin with, but later warms to the child, showing something similar to empathy, which eventually blossoms into friendship, gaining the nickname BP. Fast forwarding, we see Jacob and Gideon collecting scrap. Gideon rushes off ahead of his brother, the siblings' loud voices and heavy footing dislodging part of the ceiling, causing Jacob's death. BP and Khalil were in the wrong place at the wrong time, Khalil even stating that Jacob's death was terrible and that the two boys seemed nice. Unfortunately, they become the main driving force for Gideon's maniacal revenge against robots. During the final confrontation with BP and Khalil, the moment where BP was smashing the ceiling wasn't to crush us with debris, but to get Khalil out to safety to see the outside world, which they promised each other they would go explore as friends. Khalil passes away before BP, saying how he wishes they were together forever. BP is second to go, but not before dropping us with another painful guilt trip.
BP alone. BP. Cry.
But turn those frowns upside down, because in a novella from the Drakengard 10th anniversary box, it tells us that BP made it out from the junk heap alive, having lost most of his memory but remembering the words from him, begging him to go and see the outside world. Along his journey, he finds other robots and persuades them to join him on his hunt for the outside world. Eventually, BP and the other robots have become a single assimilated sphere, no longer resembling a human form. The entity formerly known as P-33 escapes the junk heap and sees an unusual sight. Machines, which the BP hive mind note as being an alien race, are fighting a group of what appear to be humans. They aren't human, however, and are based primarily of female-looking soldiers. These are androids. The BP hive mind hack a simple command into every machine unit: let us live. After a while, the fighting ceases. A feeling of brotherhood and solidarity replaces the fighting. The BP hive mind lets out a cry of joy as they exit the stratosphere and see the stars. They finalize it with a song. We are headed even further into the outside world, just as we promised you. We are alive just as you were. We are singing, singing, singing. Will our song reach you? Will our feelings reach you, wherever you are? Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh yeah, ending B. I kinda got a little bit sidetracked there. There are a few things here that are different about the Shadowlord's castle. The first being these mysterious shade orbs that NieR cuts down with no second thoughts. These are fucking Gestalt babies. Jesus Christ. Secondly, we get to see the demise of the King of Facade. This is something that's left up in the air in ending A, but this just stamps on your hopes like a flaming bag filled with shit. The ending itself isn't really anything special. It's just a little extended version of the moment with the Shadowlord and Yona in the afterlife, kinda cementing the original NieR's ending in stone a little better than ending A. Oh yeah, and one more thing.
Wow, that was crazy!
As many of you are aware, especially been keeping up to date with Automata news, is that Emil made it out okay, albeit a little handicapped. It's worth noting that despite Emil making an appearance as one of the side characters in Automata, he's now well over 15,000 years old in the game's timeline. Before this, he even has a fight with some aliens. The novella isn't overly important, so I can sum it up in this quick segment. Hey, you alright fam? Look at this fucking ball-ass twat. Fuck you. What you doing? Fuck off. Oh, fucking hell, he's packing heat. I'm out, mate. Fuck off, cunt. Finally, we can touch on endings C and D. Both are thankfully connected to each
I needed that. I needed that. I needed that. I needed that. It's good comedic relief to a very dark realization. Can I just see that again? I need that. I need that. I need that in my life right now.
Wow, that was crazy!
As many of you are aware, especially been keeping up to date with Automata news, is that Emil made it out okay, albeit a little handicapped. It's worth noting that despite Emil making an appearance as one of the side characters in Automata, he's now well over 15,000 years old in the game's timeline. Before this, he even has a fight with some aliens. The novella isn't overly important, so I can sum it up in this quick segment. Hey, you alright fam? Look at this fucking ball-ass twat. Fuck you. What you doing? Fuck off. Oh, fucking hell, he's packing heat. I'm out, mate. Fuck off, cunt. Finally, we can touch on endings C and D. Both are thankfully connected to each other, as they both revolve around Kaine. Ending C starts us off from Kaine's departure from NieR and Yona. Tyran begins to go on an edgy baby boy rant about how killing was totally fucking rad. However, he quickly changes his mind, claiming that it now feels empty. In fact, there's a line he says in a previous room that hints towards his changing nature that just makes my skin crawl.
Hey, sunshine. Here's something kinda weird happening in your heart. The hate is gone. The sadness is gone. It's just a bunch of white light now.
Tyran is about to relapse. If he relapses, so will Kaine, causing them both to go berserk. Kaine asks one final request from NieR.
I want you to kill me.
During the battle, Tyran makes his first vocal appearance to NieR. He states that when the time is right, he'll pin Kaine down so NieR can save her. It'd appear that even Tyran, formerly known as Yura, has also had a change of heart. And when the time does come, NieR is presented with two choices. Kill Kaine and end her suffering, or make her human again, destroying Tyran and completely wiping NieR from existence. If you choose to kill Kaine, she dissolves into nothingness. Tyran speaks to NieR in the same manner that Vice did, telling NieR that as a being who has been tormenting Kaine for years, if he tells him that she's free now, he wants NieR to believe him. He also delivers a final message from Kaine.
Thank you.
If you choose to sacrifice yourself in exchange for Kaine's life, well, everything is wiped. Yep, you heard me. Your weapons are wiped, your items are wiped, your save file is wiped. NieR is completely and utterly removed from existence, not even a memory remaining. That is, unless you're a cheeky cunt like me.
Hey, I just ID'd your body, and he's cute. No way. I'm getting hacked.
A port skin?
No, this is major. They've already burned through the
PSN.
public firewall.
Kaine wakes up and is greeted by Yona. Yona asks if she was the one who saved her as Kaine looks around an empty room. After touching Yona, she has a brief flash of a man she doesn't know, a memory she shouldn't have. She begins to cry as she says it's almost as if she's found something very special. As a way to finish this Goliath of a project, I thought I'd run over Ending E, an ending which was exclusive to a novella. Even before Ending E, there's a segment in the drama CD where after the events of the Shadowlord, Kaine gets attached to a villager who showed affection to her, but he's killed in a shade ambush. Kaine storms into his house where the little sister is mourning over his body. The sound of ripping clothes can be heard and loud banging. Now, one of the more common theories, also keeping in mind how the sister is completely freaked out by this, is how Kaine is fucking the corpse.
What the?
Moving on to Ending E. In this ending, Kaine reaches the Forest of Myth, hunting for more shades to kill as a way for her to vent her frustrations about feeling like she's lost something precious. However, a lot has changed since our last visit. Power cables have now completely covered the ground floor like tree roots, a strange green sap or oil accompanying them. When Kaine reaches the most strange looking tree in the forest, the vines materialise in the form of a young man. Kaine cuts off the head of this man, but the vines simply materialise again. The form states its name, which is lost in translation, but it states that the forest is now entering its final transition, the complete reset of the Replicant and Gestalt program. The entity who I assume to be Sleeping Beauty's final form sends a wave of non-sentient P-33s after Kaine, eventually throwing out a copy of Kaine herself to fight, which is rumoured to be an android. Not long after, Emil coincidentally finds Kaine, now sporting a makeshift body. The two team up together, and in a final blast they take down the enemy's core. The young man, or Sleeping Beauty, compliments how far replicants have come before it dissolves into a giant puddle along with the forest. Emil protects Kaine from the storm of power cables and now flying wildly after the forest's demise, but Kaine eventually reaches an area of blinding light that she thinks is the border between reality and a dream world. She feels something familiar to her in this light and tries to grab it. Whatever it is tells her to stop, but she refuses, exclaiming that she must get this back no matter what the consequences. She feels an invisible force pushing her forward, telling her, "I'll leave this guy to you, lingerie woman." I can't say exactly who this is, but I know exactly who I want it to be. She returns to reality, the Forest of Myth being replaced by a techno-organic flower resembling a lunar tear. In the centre is Kaine, holding a young boy in her arms as Emil floats towards them. The trio have finally been reunited after 3 long years. I legitimately hope I helped some of you understand many of the details that the main game left out, and maybe agree or disagree with many of the points I made about Taro's writing or the game in general. I think the biggest compliment to me will be knowing how many people actually went out and bought the game or previous titles, becoming fans of this bizarre series themselves. As to whether or not I think you should play the game, I'm going to say you absolutely should. If you don't own a console that plays it, then that's understandable, but I think experiencing the game for yourself will make you feel a much stronger connection to it rather than looking at it through my videos. Apparently if Automata sells like hotcakes, then there's a chance that NieR might get remastered, so you know what to do. The game itself is bland at points, frustrating at points, and overall a title that's very love and hate in its presentation. The fact that the story is fragmented over different games, short stories, and drama CDs is a little bit aggravating, but at the same time I fully respect the choice to expand the universe beyond the main game itself. Despite all of this, the game is still fucking good. What it doesn't deliver completely in gameplay, it delivers fantastically in its storytelling. As to whether I'm going to look at NieR Automata, of course I am. As soon as I have enough research into what Automata is presenting us with, then I'll hopefully do an analysis. This obviously won't be any time soon, but I hope you look forward to it regardless. Thank you for joining me on this mammoth of a project. The best thing you can do for me is to share the video around with as many people as you can, and subscribing and clicking the bell would be an obvious help. I've got many more projects lined up, and I hope you're all as excited about NieR Automata as I am. See you all next time. Mwah!
Thank you. Okay, so whose corpse did she fuck again? Was it NieR's? Oh. Why is it always corpse fucking? Well, that gives us a little bit of context, but it does give context. It does give context. I think this context will probably come in handy in Route C, D, and E, most probably. Route A and B of NieR Automata, I feel that I've understood it fairly well. Route A and B. C, D, and E, I think this context will come in because in Route B they started talking about Project Gestalt, and I was a little bit, what's Project Gestalt? Now I sort of know what it is. Damn. I'm hyped to play NieR Automata tomorrow. Route C for the first time, blind. I've been waiting for it forever. Oh, fuck. I have no idea what we're in for. I have no idea what we're in for. If this is the type of stuff he likes to pull, Route B has given us a little bit of empathy for the machines. Route C, God, I don't know what they're going to pull. Am I going to get guilt-tripped for killing everything? Am I the bad guy? Are we the bad guys? Like, are the machines trying to be peaceful and we're going around murdering? Is it because the first time we see Adam's like, why fight? Is the sentient mind of the machines a continuation of what that robot implanted in the message for them to see this? I don't know. I mean, at this point, anything could happen. Let's just go in tomorrow and see what happens. I mean, that's all we can do. I'm going to edit out these videos and upload them bit by bit. Hopefully that I get caught in copyright limbo for too long. But shit, as an analysis, it was good. It was entertaining. Route B, C, D, and E was put into a nice 15-20 minutes. It didn't drag on too long. It was like I always say, it's like a skirt. It's long enough to cover the topic, short enough to be interesting. It was good. It was a nice twist, definitely. Definitely, and it looks like a big game too. I can just imagine someone playing that, investing so many hours into hacking and slashing, getting their items, getting their weapons, and then realizing, oh shit. I certainly hope I don't get that with my bloody NieR Automata, because our level's significantly higher. We've killed a big number of machines. And a few of them, especially the Forest Kingdom, was a little bit oh crap. Like the Forest King was a little baby, right? That created a kingdom in the forest so they could live in peace as a family. I'm kind of having questions about why we did that. I'm kind of having questions about the Yorha units that defected and why we killed them. Because I think it was, what was that unit? 11A or whatever the hell? The mission we had to kill her. It was like, why? She was like, why did you kill my squad? You know what I mean? There's so many possibilities. Something's coming, and I don't think I can figure out what it is, but I know something's coming. Okay, tomorrow's Route C. Let's get ready for that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being awesome. Thank you for hopping over to the Twitch. Having regrets? Good. I'm having doubts. I'm having doubts. I had some doubts throughout the playthrough, but being a gamer, I like the experience, I like the items, I like the powering up, but I'm having doubts. Route B has given me doubts. Yeah, well, Square Enix did trademark NieR, so that's the rumor. I guess we'll find out. All right, thank you for coming. Thank you for being awesome. I'll edit out these videos. I'll see you guys tomorrow. If you haven't clicked that follow on the Twitch, do that now. And I will see you guys tomorrow morning with NieR Automata. Thanks for being awesome. Until then, NinjaKuma out. Bye. What the fuck?
Child.
What is this?
Don't listen to them, 2B.
Together forever. Together forever. Carry.
They don't have any feelings.